Good day, good morning, good evening. It's 1 o'clock here in Geneva, and so we welcome you again back to Minamata Online. We will be convening today, tomorrow, and the next day for documents briefings in the run-up to COP 4.2. My name is Claudia ten Hafe, and I will be joined by my colleague Esako Toda in particular today to speak to you about a number of the documents that are going to be before COP 4.2. And later in the hour, we will also be joined by 3 more colleagues on some logistical matters that you might also would like some clarity on. But that will be in the last half an hour of this particular session. For the first hour, we will, as the flyer also indicated, concentrate our efforts on the matters of the agenda, the annotated agenda, the document called Issues and Information for the Attention of the Conference of the Parties, as well as the matters related to Annex A and B and effectiveness evaluation. This is quite a bit of work to get through, and so let me invite you to join us to jump right into all of that. So if I may have the next slide. Just to outline that, of course, we have been on quite a preparatory course since 4.1 concluded in on November the 5th last year. In January, registration opened. You might also have joined us for a very exciting GEN event where we had the GEF CEO and we also had our Executive Secretary, Monika Stankiewicz, and others discuss the 8th replenishment round. If you were not able to join us, links to that very intriguing conversation and discussion are available on our website as well as on the GEN website. We have also been busy, parties have been busy in consultations, and I'll touch on that in a minute further, but most importantly is, of course, just to show what we are busy with. Now in February, we have February the 1st today, and with that, the first of 3 document briefing sessions. We will be speaking to some of the items you see here more in the document briefing tomorrow, including the technical documents forum, and on Thursday, we will be speaking to the budget forum as well. But with that, let me leave you with this as the overview and dig directly into the actual overview of COP 4.2. We will be meeting from 21st of March to 25th of March in Bali, Indonesia, in person. And this 5-day meeting stretches as usual from Monday to Friday with plenary sessions as indicated here, the usual UN hours of 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock for morning sessions and 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock for afternoon sessions. There is also availability to work in the evenings on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. But given the circumstances, including of the fragility still surrounding COVID and other such matters, and to support very good working conditions, we would be supporting all of these sessions and to not extend beyond 10 o'clock in the evening. This just as a very basic overview, and just to draw your attention in this slide also to that the Saturday and Sunday beforehand already will be available for regional meetings and other such preparatory meetings to convene. And also, of course, that the Bureau will be having its own deliberations as well at the beginning of that on Saturday. And lastly, on-site registration will open on the 18th. That's the Friday, the 18th of March already. But of course, registration, on-site registration and collection of badges will be available every day. But we will speak to you more about registration at the end for other information. Let me take you to the next slide, which is rather small, but we will try to take you through it again and again over today, tomorrow, and the day after in terms of the proposed tentative schedule of work for COP 4.2. That is the order in which the agenda items will be taken up in plenary. This particular tentative schedule of work has been designed to keep in mind that important topics are launched in a good time so that parties can deliberate on them fully for the time that is available during the COP week. It has also been developed taking into account that groups should only meet in such a way on the side of plenary that plenary can be conducted fully and perhaps only one contact group or so meets on the side, or that when plenary is not convening, that two contact groups can meet concurrently, but never more than three streams of work, never more than two streams of work at the same time. Today, we will speak a bit about the topics that are, or the agenda items that are put forward for Monday, the 21st. And particularly, I'd like to take you through the documents that are more of an organizational matter in terms of agenda, annotated agenda, etc. Today, we will not touch on rules of procedure, that is item 3, or financial rules, that's item 4. We will introduce those items very briefly during our Thursday session. But today, we will focus on item 4, COP item 4A, in particular, as it concerns little 1, which are mercury added products and manufacturing in which mercury and mercury compounds are used. Firstly, the review of the annexes A and B, and secondly, the information on dental amalgam, and also related the proposals for amendments that have been received. And then secondly, as large bundle, we will also speak to you about the effectiveness evaluation. All these items for the Tuesday of COP, the Wednesday of COP, and Thursday of COP, we will cover in the next days. With that, let me go to the next slide. And again, just to reiterate that the tentative schedule is designed to allow maximum time in plenary to consider and to deliberate and adopt items. Plenary is the most important venue for COP deliberations in that it is fully supported for UN languages. Of course, there may be times when the Conference of the Parties would need to also deliberate in smaller groups. However, in smaller groups, interpretation is not available. And further, as I also mentioned, this particular tentative schedule has been designed so that one group may perhaps work alongside plenary, or that two groups work concurrently once plenary has adjourned. And just to outline also the time pressures, of course, that parties face during the 5-day COP includes that all substantive matters that have budgetary implications would need to be finalized in time for the contact group on program of work and budget to be able to consider them as well from a budgetary perspective. And since that group is going to be convening from Wednesday onwards, one presumes, so that it can enable it to have enough time for the adoption of the budget by Friday. Much of this substantive work, of course, is focused at the beginning of the week. May I also just highlight here, but we will speak more on credentials later, that the important deadline of handing in the credentials, and this is also as the credentials report is set to be adopted on Thursday to allow the rest of the work to proceed in time. With that, the next slide. As mentioned, we have divided the document briefing into 3 days, and here are the 3 bundles of documents we will be outlining today, all the way from agenda to list of documents. And then with Esako Toda, we will introduce to you Annex A and B and the amendment proposals. And then again, also with Esako, information related to the effectiveness evaluation. And tomorrow's plan is set out here and the day after as well. Let me take you to the next slide. If you haven't already, just to recall that all our documents are available on our website. They have been prepared, in fact, for COP 4.1 and so have been available since September last year. Here and there, some documents were already considered by 4.1, and you will see a little annotation on the website if that was the case. But the bulk of documents, of course, are only going to be opened for COP 4.2. Next, we begin now with these larger overview documents as they relate to agenda for COP4, the annotated agenda, the issues and information for parties, and also a list of documents. Out of all of these, very important to indicate here is that when COP4 convened online from the 1st to the 5th of November, it adopted the agenda for the meeting. So the fourth meeting agenda has been adopted. And shortly, you will see that the documents annotated provisional agenda, as well as issues and information, will appear as REV documents just to update that the agenda has been adopted on the 1st of November 2021. It follows from here that matters for considerations follow what was adopted at the time. I would like to draw your attention, if I may just have the previous slide back. I'd like to draw your attention in particular to the revised annotated agenda Annex 3, which indeed is the tentative schedule that I've just introduced to you for your orientation into what is planned for every day going forward for COP 4.2. And just to reiterate here that all agenda items will be opened at COP 4.2, and those agenda items that were already opened at COP 4.1 will be resumed until all business, as the COP decides, has been concluded and completed by the end of the deliberations on Friday. May I also draw your attention to the golden box, because we've had the opportunity of doing something novel in Minamata Convention, very much because we have this 4.1 and 4.2 split, which is namely on the item of effectiveness evaluation. In November last year, the COP agreed to do inter-sessional consultations on that item to take place in preparation and anticipation of COP 4.2. And these consultations are on the framework, and I will return to more details on that in a moment. But with that, the next slide gives you the bird's eye view of all the agenda items for COP4. It starts, of course, with the usual procedural matters, such as the opening and organizational matters, and also items that are still part of the work to complete by the COP, which includes item 3.1 consideration that is in Rule 45. But mostly I would like to draw your attention, especially for the documents briefings, to item 4, item 5, and item 6. Item 4 is, of course, where the bulk of substantive work of the convention takes place, and items A all the way to L are part of the agenda. And also item 5, international cooperation and coordination, gives you an opportunity to consider as parties all the auxiliary and complementary and additional work that augments the direct work of the convention. And very importantly, item 6 is the parties' consideration of the program of work of the convention and the secretariat and the associated budget. The last items, again, are items very familiar, of course, to our parties, the usual items in terms of consideration of COP5 dates and venues, other matters, and then concluding with the adoption of the report of the entire COP4 and also the closure of the meeting. Moving on, I'd like to just halt here for a second and look into our virtual room just to see if there's any specific question on the documents and the process just presented. And just to say that the link to the tentative schedule is available on the meeting website of COP4. So if I was too quick to show it to you and you'd like to revisit it, please go to our main website and specifically the COP4 deliberations, and you shall find the link there. Okay, let me just check for a moment if there are any raised hands or any items in the chat in terms of questions. I see none. Should another question come to mind, please record it in the chat and then we shall be happy to try to clarify. With that, we go into a set of very important and very deliberate work that has been done over quite some time. And I'm extremely happy to have our colleague Esako Toda here, who you know has been the lead in the Secretariat to support the work that is now being presented, of course, to COP 4.2, which is on mercury-added products and processes. Esako, please, over to you.
Isaac, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry about that. So thank you, Claudia. And I'm going to present on the products and processes, agenda item 4A. And agenda item 4A is divided into 4 sub-items. The first one, review of Annex A and B, and second one, information dental amalgam. The third one, customs codes. These 3 flow from the mandate from COP3. And the fourth one, proposals for amendment to Annexes A and B. This item was triggered by the party submission. Substantively, the sub-item 1, 2, and 4 are very closely linked. So we are going to present this today, and also we are going to handle these 3 sub-items on the first day of COP4. And the third one, customs codes, is quite technical, and we are going to present it tomorrow. So next slide, please. Perhaps to the next one. So the first sub-item is the review of Annex A and B. The Articles 4 and 5 provide that COP shall review Annexes A and B and may consider their amendments no later than 5 years of entry into force, which is August this year. So the COP4 needs to take up the review of these annexes. The same articles provide that COP shall take into account at least proposals submitted by parties for listing in the annex, which shall include information related to the availability, technical and economic feasibility, and environmental and health risks and benefits of the non-mercury alternatives. And these submissions are circulated as addendum to document 26. And secondly, information collected and made available by the Secretariat on products and processes. Thirdly, the availability to parties of mercury-free alternatives that are technically and economically feasible, taking into account environmental and human health risks and benefits. These pieces of information are included in the mandate of the expert group and documents submitted from that group. The COP3 took its decision 3/1, establishing an ad hoc expert group to prepare a document enhancing and organizing information on products and processes. The group's report is set out in Annex 1 to document 4/4. Additionally, the paragraph 2 of Article 4 has a special provisions uh, 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 allowing alternative measures in lieu of the phase out of manufacture, import, and export of products listed in Annex A Part 1. And this the same paragraph 2 provides that COP shall review the progress and effectiveness of these alternative measures to phase out of products taken by the parties. COP Decision 3/1 requested parties to report on such measures. A report was submitted by one party, and it is set out in Annex 2 to the document 4/4. Next slide, please. So, this is about the review of Annexes A and B. Then what is Annex A? Annex A is, of course, relevant to the mercury added products, and it consists of three components. The first component is the list of exclusions, which you see on the at that bottom left, and it provides for exclusions of military use and research use and so on and so forth. And the second one is part one, and part one is a list of products that are to be phased out by certain date, which is 2020. That can be extended for five years with the registration of exemption. And part two is about the other measures. And currently, we only have the one product category, which is dental amalgam, and it provides for the measures to phase out, phase down the use of dental amalgam. Next slide, please. Then what is Annex B? Annex B is about the processes where mercury or mercury compounds are used, and it consists of two parts. The part one is the processes to be phased out, and two processes are listed there. And part two are measures for other processes to restrict the use of mercury or mercury compounds, for which three processes are listed. Next, please. So the following the COP decision MC3/1, the ad hoc expert group, which consists of 18 members and helped by observers and co-chaired by Mr. Darren Bill of Ireland and Ms. Gwenetta Fordis, Guyana, began its work, and it held 11 online meetings and 10 thematic group calls because of the COVID situation. The group could not have an in-person meeting. The group worked on the submissions from parties and others of information on mercury products and mercury using processes, and availability, technical and economic feasibility, and the environmental and health risk and benefits of mercury, non-mercury alternatives, as stipulated in the Articles 4 and 5. COP requested the group to enhance and organize the information, which the group did. And the COP3 requested the Secretariat to prepare a report by 30th of April last year, which the group did. The report, the summary report is set out as Annex 1 to document 4/4, and the structure is reproduced at the bottom right of this slide. And also the more thick document, organized and enhanced compilation of information is set out as INF3. An example of a page of the document is can be seen at top right. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of excerpt from the report, and I'm not certainly going into details, but for example, for batteries, the report uh, uh, sets from the submissions of information, it says mercury-free alternatives are commercially available for all applications of the main types of button cell batteries, silver oxide, alkaline, zinc, air, and have been available from major battery manufacturers, and so on. So, but for example, for lamps, it is a bit more complicated because there are many kinds of lamps. The fluorescent lamps and high intensity discharge lamps, and so on and so forth. And for some lamps, such as the compact fluorescent lamps with integrated ballast, the availability and feasibility of alternatives is relatively simple. But for as noted in the uh, uh, second bullet of lamps, diverging information on the availability of LED retrofit lamps for existing CFL compact fluorescent lamps with separate ballast and linear fluorescent lamps, LFL. So it is very difficult to summarize to prepare a kind of balanced summary of the report. So I'm not going into details of all the technicalities. The next slide is about the other product categories. And one interesting example is satellite propulsion. And please note that these pieces of information is for the product categories that are listed in Part 1 or that are not listed in Annex A. The product listed in Annex the Part 2, which is dental amalgam, was not discussed by this group, but it is included in the next document. Next slide, please. So, and about the processes, as I said, there are 2 processes in part 1 and 3 processes in part 2, and the group reviewed information on some processes that were not listed in the annexes. At the bottom, you see the mercury use in gold plating and fire gilding. This information was provided by an expert at the meeting. Next one is okay. So this is it for the annex item agenda item A1 and agenda item A2. The next one is about the dental amalgam. This comes from the separate decision of the COP. The Article 3 and Annex A Part 2 provide that each party shall take measures to phase down the use of the dental amalgam, which shall include 2 or more of the 9 measures listed in that annex. The the COP-3 considered a proposal by a number of parties to amend Annex A, providing for the phase out of the manufacture, import, and export of dental amalgam. As a result of its deliberation, COP adopted decision MC3/2 on dental amalgam, which encouraged the parties to take more than 2 required measures to phase down the use of dental amalgam. Secondly, request the Secretariat to collect information on the implementation of any such additional measures taken by the parties. Number 3, it requests the Secretariat to collect information related to availability, technical and economic feasibility, and environmental and health risks of benefits of the non-mercury alternatives, which is quite related to the mandate to the Annex A and B review group. Additionally, there's one INF document, INF 2026, which sets out a report on the informal global WHO consultation with policymakers in dental public health. We hear that WHO is considering an additional piece of information to be submitted to COP, and as we receive, we are going to have circulated as an information document. Next slide, please. So this is about the first mandate from the dental amalgam decision, which was about the measures taken by parties. And we sorted out. We have put these measures into the box, 9 boxes of the measures listed in Annex A Part 2, and also there are measures taken by parties that are not included in the list of 9 measures. For example, legislation prohibiting the use of dental amalgam for children and pregnant or breastfeeding women, recommendation that certain high-risk groups use non-mercury alternatives for dental fittings, and the pre-treatment standard for wastewater from dental offices, awareness-raising activities. So we listed these measures that are not included in the list. The next one is perhaps the last one. And the second mandate from the dental amalgam decision was about the availability, economic feasibility, and technical risk and benefit of alternatives. And it is quite clear that alternatives exist, but the document clarifies or summarizes the discussion made on the technical and economic feasibility of non-mercury alternatives. I think next one, please. I think this is okay. So there's an info stop. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esaku. We decided to build in some info stops because we are aware that we are giving you a lot of information. You may already have reviewed the documents in detail, or maybe you have not. And so we just wanted to use this opportunity here after a big substantial item has been introduced by Esaku and later also by myself, to check in that it is clear what we have presented, but also if you have in the meantime already noted some questions of your own, just to record them in the chat and that we could try to clarify where we can. But just as overview on what Esaku presented, of course, there are 2 annexes, A and B, and by the mandates that Esaku identified earlier and as very clearly set out in each of these documents, it is now at the fourth meeting that the COP is reviewing these annexes and all of the tremendous work that has been done by the group on the one hand, and as presented by Esako in terms of the areas both under products and processes. I'm sure you will be as impressed as I am about the encyclopedia of knowledge that has been put forward on these products and processes, but it is now on the basis of this work and related insights by parties that it is before the COP to, in fact, do this review of Annex A and B. In other words, the group that met put the information together, but the task of actually reviewing is the task of the COP. And so here is highlighted that the COP may wish to take into account all of the presented information and pursuant to the relevant articles and paragraphs, that is Article 4, Paragraph 9 for products and Article 5, Paragraph 11 processes to conduct its review of Annexes A and B. We did also, Isaku also presented on dental amalgam. It is, of course, part of Annex A. In other words, it in fact part 2 of Annex A. And there was a specific mandate of work to complete in the run-up to COP-4 in that regard, as he outlined. And so it's also for the COP to take note of that information. So with this as very broad background, may I look into the chat window to ascertain if there are perhaps specific comments on the documents just presented. So let me just scroll over, and just to say, if a question is being posed right now about an item we will speak to a bit later, I trust you will allow us just to pick that question for later. So now it's the questions related to anything in terms of Annex A and B. So I see a question from Anna Galite, which says, could the Secretariat confirm that this is about the amendment proposals? May I just park that question for a moment, because we will go deeper into the documents on amendment proposals right after this. We are now literally looking at the documents simply on the review first, and the review as it encompasses everything in document 4.4, the work of the group and other information put forward, including by the United States, and also all of the information on dental amalgam. So with your indulgence, if I could ask your patience to wait until we speak on the proposals. There's also a question about gold plating. So perhaps, Esako, you may wish to speak to that topic. And then may I also draw your attention, yeah, actually, Esako, may I ask you perhaps just to take that one, a technical question on plating. Thank you.
Thanks, Claudia. So, yeah, I think the question is about whether there's any further information about gold plating, but the group received only one piece of input on the use of mercury in gold plating. So, as outcome from the deliberation of the expert group, there's the only information can be found in the INF document. So perhaps this is as much as I can say on that topic. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We note, of course, a keen interest in this topic. It is very important to some countries and some parties. I just want to comment, also draw your attention, Isako, to another question from Nepal. I believe Nepal is still in the process of ratifying the convention, but if I may perhaps ask you, Isako, just to speak, to comment on the question we have received from Ram Charitra Sar, In Nepal, the ministry has banned the use of dental amalgam as reported by the Secretariat, but this is not reflected in the presentation. Perhaps you could just shed some light on that. Thank you, Isako.
Well, I think Nepal has ratified. I have to look into the website. I'm not sure whether it is a party at the point of COP-4 or not. But when we received the information from Nepal, it was not a party, but we included the information from Nepal and the other non-parties in the document, and it is the measures, the banning measures by Nepal is clearly noted in the document and in my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isako. I see, yes, the confirmation that Nepal is still in the process of ratifying, but it's of course terrific to know that such measures are already being applied in the country of Nepal and would stand in good stead to be compliant once Nepal is joining formally. I also see some other questions, more about Annex A, the annexes, and more broadly on effectiveness evaluation. And with your indulgence, Mr. Toshiyosaki, if I may return to that in a moment later. May I just look one more time into the chat if there is any other specific question, probably more of a technical nature, to the presentations of the information that has been put together by the group, the technical group, on Annexes A and B, and the INF document that is consisting of various tables and very detailed information on processes and products using mercury or mercury compounds. If there's any other specific comments to that or to dental amalgam, I don't think I see any, but please know that we have seen your other questions and we'll try to build that in afterwards. If something else comes to mind about this, please simply record it here and we shall return. But if that is okay, I would like to move to the next part of the presentation, and I shall try to make it, it is of course in many ways linked because it is also about Annexes A and B. And though I have a number of slides, I will only speak to them lightly. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the Secretariat has received proposals for amendments to these annexes, Annexes A and B. The Secretariat has received 3 proposals, one from the EU, one on behalf of Africa from Botswana, Burkina Faso, and Madagascar, and one from Canada and Switzerland. And as you can see projected on the left-hand side, we have made them available to you as COP-4 documents, and in addition 1, 2, and 3 to the overall document, which is the one I will speak to a little bit more. That is document 26. So in other words, document 26 gives you the overview of all 3 proposals received and also some information on process and procedure. However, each proposal as it is in standalone, please look at the respective add documents. And as it concerns proposals for amendments, which is of course a very important and specific process, I'd like to, of course, highlight here that all proposals were communicated to the Secretariat well in time. You will recall that Article 6 stipulates that any text for proposed amendments would need to be communicated to parties as also as the depository at least 6 months before the opening of the COP at which they are to be considered. And that happened already on the 30th of April 2021. In other words, all 3 proposals were immediately notified to all parties, signatories, and also the depository. All information is prominently on our website, and then as well, all have been prepared as proper COP documents. May I just recall here that amendments and amendments of annexes and the adoption thereof are governed by the convention text as set out in Article 26 and also as set out in Article 27. With that, let me take you to the next slide. And to recall that we have had an in-depth session, in fact, already on this on the 1st of September, where each of the proponents of the respective proposals put forward their proposal. Each of these proposals is put forward in two parts. That is the text they wish to see or they propose to see amended, and also an explanatory note on why such a proposal is made in the first place. And so you will see this in each of the addenda to the document 26. It is set out in exactly the same way. First, the text that is proposed to be amended, and then an explanation or rationale for this proposal. What we have done as the Secretariat, and to try to make it easier for parties, is to be able to look at these proposals against the text we currently have in Annex A and B. And so I shall take you through that visually in the next slide. But this particular, these sets of slides you will see from now onwards are all in document, is part of the annex in document 426. So the next slide shows the annex, and in each part you will see white text, or the white boxes are the current text, and in gray is the proposal that has been put forward. Here you will see on batteries, of course, a proposal put forward by the European Union with the proposed date at which the manufacturer, import or export of these batteries should not be allowed by. The proposal is 2023. You will also see that just a little bit further down in that table that Canada and Switzerland have also made a proposal, and this proposal has to do with another part that includes mercury, and that is identified here very clearly in terms of both the item that they wish to propose for phase out, but also the date being proposed, that is 2025. The next slide is a simple continuation of that overall table. Again, you will see the slide reflecting in gray the proposals made, and here you will see proposals made by the African region and also a proposal made by the EU, by the European Union, as they relate to compact fluorescent lamps. You will see also by placing it this way, we hope that we could assist you as parties and also the proponents to explain exactly what it is the proponents are putting forward and how it compares to the current obligations and also how they relate to each other's proposals. Moving on from lamps, the next slide, in fact, continuous lamps, it is quite a substantive part. There is, of course, also another proposal from Africa there in terms of lamps by 2024. And further again are some more measuring devices and being put forward by the EU. And specifically, Canada and Switzerland are putting forward some items, other items such as counterbalancing devices used for dia balancing, also photographic film and paper, propellants for satellites and spacecraft, as well as polyurethane is being put forward by the European Union. And moving along, as you know, Annex A also contains Part 2, as Isako just explained, and here are the provisions on dental amalgam. Again, the white text shows the current text, and the next slide puts forward a proposal by the European Union in terms of an addition into that part 2. And the next slide puts forward a proposal by Africa on dental amalgam to replace the current information that is contained in that part. And again, moving on, we also, of course, have Annex B, and this is the annex on processes. And here, just to highlight that the EU has identified the production, in other words, the process of producing polyurethane that contain mercury-containing catalysts as an item for potential or possible inclusion under Annex B. And with that, the next slide is simply to stop for an info stop. Let me just summarize here that, of course, it is the review has been set in process as explained earlier in terms of a certain number of years after the entry into force that a review of Annexes A and B was to be conducted. All of that has been prepared as outlined by Esako earlier and is before the COP. That may in itself necessitate some review of the current lists. And in addition to that, 3 proposals for amendments have reached the parties by the timeline set out in the convention text, and thus the COP would be considering these proposals and the detail contained in them. I also just wish to highlight, rather than speaking to the specific technicalities of the different proposals, that this document also includes some process information of what happens once the COP has decided to make an amendment and how this enters into force and when it's considered to be entered into force for all parties. But all information specific to the proposals, all technical information, each of the proponents have actually been drawing from the documents prepared for the review. With that, let me pause for a moment and just to check if there were specific questions to these documents as they relate to the amendment proposals that we could try to give clarity on. And let me take a moment just to look at the chat. Let me take Anna's question, or seek to take Anna's question. Anna asks, could the Secretariat confirm that only the formal submissions to Annexes A and B will be considered for discussion at COP-4 or COP-4.2? Let me point out here, and as I've tried to show in the slides, that the convention sets out a timeline to ensure all parties are aware of something as important as an amendment proposal coming forward. And this timeline means that all amendment proposals are to reach the Secretariat in time for the Secretariat to be able to communicate such proposals 6 months ahead of time of consideration. In other words, parties are to have the opportunity to look carefully at amendment proposals and be able to do internal consultations in their national context and as needed in their international contexts on this matter. As such, there are 3 proponents or 3 proposals being put forward by the respective proponents, that is the EU, Africa, and also Canada and Switzerland. As such, if I may paraphrase, there would be now not any other additional proposal coming forward. It would be the 3 proposals that have come forward, or as the COP can decide during this time on the basis of the 3 proposals. I hope that has given you some clarity, at least in terms of the process of notifying submissions of proposals and how that goes into the COP process. Let me also look again. May I perhaps now take Mr. Yoshizaki's question? Of course, this is one of those questions we as Secretariat try to support, of course, the President very clearly on, as it is the President's role to find, to ensure that there is sufficient time for the important topics that need time to consider deeper alongside topics that can be managed through plenary deliberation. And let me just paraphrase Mr. Yoshizaki's question, and that is how to ensure there's sufficient time to look at the review of the annexes and possibly also the proposals that have come forward, as well as the other item which we will speak to in a moment, that is on effectiveness evaluation. It is one of the comments I'd like to make here is that the President intends to be able to even adjourn plenary earlier in a session so that the two groups could work as soon as possible and next to each other on the important matters before them. In other words, where there is no need to continue plenary discussions, the plenary will simply adjourn, and that time that is usually for plenary would then be already available for contact groups or other small groups as identified by the President in consultation with the Bureau and therefore the regional groups well in time. May I look into the chat, and I see there is a question from Thailand. And I may need to take this internal to also ensure that we have a good understanding of the question, Thailand. It is about Article 30, paragraph 5. So if you could bear with us for a moment as we look at this question and return to you. So thank you very much for that. Is there any other question, and have I sufficiently answered the first one on Annex A and B?
Claudia,
Yes, please.
exactly. So I noticed that I saw a question in my chat box, but I noticed that this is a private chat to me. But I think this is very good to share. I received a question from Mr. Leon Kenning of the Global Lighting Association, and his question was about the linear fluorescent lamp phosphate issue being simple, and he agrees that it is quite simple that the phosphate can be exchanged by the tri-band lamps, but limitedly by LED retrofit lamps, so which is one of the divergent views. So I would like to note that this the report of the group was very carefully crafted to identify where the experts' consensus was and where the divergent views were, and this is exactly captured in the report. So I just wanted to note that this is a very good example of how the expert group report can inform COP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esako. And with that, you of course can see that Esako knows each of these products quite intimately and even the processes by now. So should there be another question that has come to mind in the reading of the documents, please feel free to reach out to him directly just to gain clarity and help you navigate the very dense materials, both in terms of 4.4, the actual review, and if you have any other questions related to the amendment, and I have recognized, of course, the question from Thailand, please feel free to forward them to me or CC to the general inbox, and we shall come back to you. With that, and given that we are marching on in time, we would also like to introduce to you the other rather large item for consideration at COP 4.2, and that is effectiveness evaluation. I have indicated, of course, that effectiveness evaluation was opened at COP 4.1, and indeed some information there was already shared on some of the documents that have been prepared. We also at that time had other information coming forward in the form of a conference room paper by after the consultations that have been conducted by Norway and Canada. And based on that, there was the agreement to also have some inter-sessional or inter-segment consultation further to that. I will speak to that detail in a second, but I would like to first, with this slide, give you the overview of why effectiveness evaluation is on the COP4 agenda. It is, of course, because paragraph 1 of Article 2 stipulates that the Conference of the Parties is to evaluate the effectiveness beginning no later than 6 years after the entry into force. And because of this, the COP and various groups and various initiatives have worked very hard over these years to put arrangements in place. And also at COP3, there has been a decision, which is the decision 310 on arrangements for the first effectiveness evaluation, and 3/4 areas of work had been identified in that COP3 decision. And so I'd like to, on this slide, present to you the work that has been done intersessionally between COP3 and COP4 as mandated by this decision. Firstly, the Conference of the Parties at its third meeting requested work on indicators that, and that work is presented to you in Addendum 1, indicators, and also with its Inf 11. Secondly, the COP requested the advancing of work on drafting guidance monitoring. That work is presented to you in Addenda 2, as well as in 12 and 25. And also the COP requested advancing the work on drafting the Article 21 synthesis report, and also the report on trade, supply, and demand, which also includes waste flows and stocks. And progress on those items of work are detailed in the overall document 418. I will explain more what you will find or what you might already have found in 418 next. So the next slide. 418 is a document by the Secretariat that gives an overview of all of the mandates that have been collected so far to allow the COP to give full effect to Article 2022, that is to be able to begin the first effectiveness evaluation by the deadline set. And so in this particular document, there is a section that looks at the overview of work done since the first meeting and the remaining areas of work that are still needed to be completed at some point, so that the full framework and arrangements for evaluating the convention are in place and to conduct its first evaluation. You see here a screenshot of the table that gives you this detail in a nutshell, and as put in the slide as well. There are 8 areas of work based on the mandates that have been collected and accumulated and in large parts already executed to give full effect to Article 22. Firstly, there is the item of the first effectiveness evaluation cycle. There are also the elements of a framework to guide the effectiveness evaluation. There is monitoring information and arrangements to allow the COP to have such information as part of its evaluation. There are also items related to reports, the 4th, 5th, and 6th area, namely Article 21 national reports, also other scientific, environmental, technical, and financial and economic reports, and also information and recommendations as put forward by the ICC, as well as other related information and documents and reports put forward to support Article 13 on financial resources and the financial mechanism, and also Article 14, which is on capacity building and technical assistance. And lastly, the COP, to complete all of this work, would also have to look at the periodicity of evaluating the effectiveness of the convention. If I go to the next slide, I would like to first just indicate here what you will find in the addenda on indicators. That was one area of work that took place or that was progressed between COP3 and COP4. The addenda sets out the process that was put in place to look at the indicators. You will recall that the indicators had been considered at COP3. They had been requested for consideration at COP3 and had been considered by COP3, but there was still some work to be done. And so the COP had requested for the compilation of views by parties on these indicators. Here you can see set out the process that was used. It started with an information session, and then parties presented initial views. Thereafter, there was an exchange, a very lively and integrating exchange by parties listening to each other's views, seeking clarification of each other's views, and all of the information that was put together during these consultations, both written and otherwise, have been presented to you either in this addenda and or in the Inf 11. We'd like to just stress from a secretariat perspective how well attended it was and how many parties in fact submitted views. And just as overall comment, of course, there are many indicators that had been identified, and they were clustered roughly as supply, demand, and pressure indicators that refer to the control mechanisms of the convention, and also, on the other hand, the important ones related to support, information, and research articles of the Convention on Financial Resources and other forms of support. With that, let me take you to the next slide. And just to outline here that the document also includes a short section where we summarize overall what all of the views, what the views brought forward. But please do look at the annexes of Inf 11 directly to see how parties articulated their views themselves. This, what you see displayed here and what you see in the document, is a summary from the Secretariat on the outcome of those consultations. Moving to the next slide, I would like to hand over to my colleague Esaku to introduce the second part of the work under the Decision 310.
Thank you, Claudia. And this piece of work, which is about the monitoring guidance, is involved very hard work of experts, parties, and also my colleague Manuela Miranda, who could not join today. So I'm presenting on this topic on her behalf. As noted in the Article 22, the COP is to conduct effectiveness evaluation on the basis of available information, including comparable monitoring data. And the decision 3/10 requests the secretaries to work on the monitoring guidance. The process of the development of the guidance was very intensive. It is summarized in only in 3 bullets, but in the establishment of roadmap and annotated outline, there's a commenting there and drafting by experts, for experts on air, biota and human biomonitoring, and also cross-media assessment were involved, and almost 100 experts were nominated, or the names were given by parties and stakeholders to contribute the process. We have a number of the online consultation sessions, and then there are 2 rounds of commenting by parties and stakeholders. So there's a very intensive process, and the next slide shows the outline of the draft monitoring guidance, which is set out as INF 12, and the executive summary is set out in the document 18 at 2. And the document is structured as starting with the introduction and objectives, and there the 6 objectives are set out in the document, including the understanding of the level of mercury in certain places, and the spatial patterns and temporary trends, and so on and so forth. So these objectives are related to the policy questions and establishment of tiered approach in monitoring for the effectiveness evaluation. And the chapters 3, 4, 5 are dedicated to media, atmospheric monitoring, biota monitoring, and human biomonitoring. And the last chapter, 6, is discuss the cross media data management and analysis. And the tiered approach, as I mentioned, is explained in the annex. There's another supplementary information, which is in document 2025, and we have invited the input to this document, and we are now collating the information, and we are going to publish this document before or COP 4.2 as an INF document, and the supplementary material includes information on the review of existing mercury monitoring programs and data collection and management, and also the standard operating procedures, prototype of data submission template, and consideration of possible future work. So with this, I'm handing over back to Claudia again.
Thank you very much. We have a couple of additional slides on effectiveness evaluation. I mentioned earlier that we have this special time in between COP 4.1 and 4.2, where an additional intersessional consultation has been agreed upon by parties, and that is on the framework. And here is just the slide that is being also used within those consultations. Firstly, just to recall all the work that has already been done on effectiveness evaluation as mandated by decisions 1.9, 2.10, and 3.10. But it is now, as you will see in the icon, the time is now ringing to put into action at least the first part or parts of the journey of completing the first effectiveness evaluation. And in this regard, may I point out to you conference room paper 1, which is the conference room paper that was put forward by Canada and Norway. And let me underline here that this work is in addition to the work that was mandated by 3.10. This is work specifically on items that were outside of 3.10, but are also requiring some resolution by the Conference of the Party to be able to put everything in place to begin, at least to begin, the first effectiveness evaluation of the convention. Let me also draw your attention to the fact that this conference room paper is available, of course, through the entire intersessional process. If you would like to access it or any other information related to this, please simply go to our intersessional place, and you can intersessional web page where you can find all of the information. And may I also, in case you have not followed this process, highlight that the conference room paper puts forward draft terms of reference for the establishment and work of an effectiveness evaluation committee. Such a committee would be an essential part of putting in place and giving effect to Article 22. It also includes other parts that are needed for the overall completion of the first effectiveness evaluation of the convention. And if I could go to the next slide. In case you have not seen how these consultations have progressed or you'd like to catch up to where they are now, this is the plan of work that has been presented and has already, as you can see, we have just completed the part in gold. In December, we had an information session on all of the work that has been done on Article 22, and especially also on the work that is still to be completed for the effectiveness evaluation framework and its arrangements to be put in place. All parties and others too were invited to make written comments, and the deadline for that was the 20th of January. We have received a number of substantial contributions which are available on our online workspace, and each of the contributors, each of the submitters, and many other parties and others joined on the 25th of January and also the 27th of January, first to present their comments, but also to be ready and to provide clarifications of comments, as well as additional questions and views on clarifications and approaches. If you have missed any of this, or if you wish to re-look either the PowerPoint presentations and or the consultations, please go to our website to see. It was most certainly from the Secretariat's perspective a very open discussion and a very informative interaction by parties to understand each other's views better, and we hope this is all for parties' preparation going to COP 4.2. We will be making an additional addenda document available, and that will be addenda 3 on the framework, and we shall be making a notification on this as soon as it is available. If I could move through to the next topic, and mindful, of course, of time, is just that document 418 also includes a suggested action, and here not only items from 310, the decision 310 are put forward, but the overall makes reference to overall aspects that are important for the effectiveness evaluation decisions and steps forward. Let me take you to the next slide. Just to reiterate that the deadline to begin is August next year. That would be 6 years after the convention came into force on the 16th of August 2017. Not everything has to be done all at once, of course, but key items need to be done to begin the journey of effectiveness evaluation. You've heard also earlier Esaku explaining the work, the substantive work that has advanced on monitoring guidance. This is still continuing and is likely to continue even after this particular COP. So this just to show that there is a large journey behind and going forward on effectiveness evaluation. May I look now into the room just to see if there are any specific questions on the documents just presented, and of course mindful that you have not yet had access to the addenda 3 because the consultations have only are still in part ongoing and have only just come to this point. So let me look into the room. I don't see any specific question on effectiveness evaluation. We've spent already a fair amount of time on it, and so you might be well aware of it. However, if there's something that comes to mind as you peruse the documents, then please let us know, and we shall be happy to respond to you. And now, since we have a bit more time, well, only 10 minutes, but since we have a bit more time, we'd like to give you a bit of information on logistical matters that you might like to be informed of. And let me firstly say that, of course, our slides will be made available, as is practice always, so you can always revisit it later. But logistical information, and may I take us to the next slide. And of course, all our information on preparations is available on the website, but here we go. Under decision making, you will find COP-4. And with the next slide, I'd like to invite my colleague Alex to speak to you very briefly on registration. Over to you, Alex Sofrini.
Thank you, Claudia. Good day, everyone. I'll go with you briefly through the registration process. The registration window was opened on 17 January, and the deadline is on 11th of February. All parties, governments, and accredited observers had to receive an invitation email to register online containing a unique link for registration that would land the link to the Kronos online platform, where every delegate, every participant should find their personal details, if needed, edit those, select the mode of attendance of the meeting, and assign the role of each delegate. Here is important to know that taking into consideration the COVID-19 restrictions, every organization, every party is invited to limit their physical presence in Bali at maximum to 6 delegates per party, and observer countries or organizations are encouraged to limit their number of delegates to 2. Regardless of mode of attendance, every delegate, every registered and confirmed delegate will receive the details for connecting online to the meeting. So meeting will be streamed. As I mentioned, the confirmed participants will receive an email once the Secretariat, together with Indonesia, will evaluate the total number of the delegated participants, so it can be to take into consideration the COVID-19 measures and the meeting venue facilities. Also to mention that parties, developing country parties and parties with economies in transition, are also invited upon request to request, if needed, financial travel support for 1 delegate per party. All this information has to be put into the nomination letter from the organization, be it observer, or from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or permanent mission in Geneva in case of a party. I will leave my email and the email of the registration team is not indicated here. I will leave it in the chat, and I invite you to ask any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. We have a couple more slides. I just wanted to recognize that, of course, the question was asked earlier about being able to participate through streaming, and we hope you heard Alex clearly that it is indeed possible, and we are very much aware that Many are looking seriously at limiting their delegations for all the valid reasons that we all know well. So we are putting this in place so that you are able to connect to the meeting and follow it wherever you are situated in viewing mode. I will leave, there is a question specifically of whether you have to register to attend virtually, and yes, all registrations should be added, and whether you intend to come in person or in virtual presence. I believe that this is all navigable in the Kronos registration website, but should you run into any problem, please reach out to Alex, as he has invited you to ask any other questions related to that. We have a slide on credentials, and here, with your indulgence, if you have very specific questions on credentials, please reach out to our legal officer, Lara Ognibene, who we will put the details, of course, in the chat now as well. And we might have more time tomorrow or so to also go into some of this, but this has been well presented to you already in terms of the credentials that are required. And for the use of the last 4 minutes, I would like to highlight to you, thank you, Lara has just put that there. I would like to give the floor to Richard to speak to you about side events, which has just come as up as a question. And lastly, just to say that for registration, we have a registration deadline to enable all the work that has to go into travel arrangements to happen in good time. So we really urge you to register by the deadline, if at all possible. If you have any trouble to register by the deadline, please contact Alex or the Secretariat so that we can see if there's any other way. Certainly, any funded participant has her or his registration has to reach us in time for us to be able to make the travel arrangements. And may I hand over to Richard to speak to you about side events, and that would be the next slide. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Claudia. Good day, good evening, everyone. So the applications are currently open for pre-COP 4.2 online side events, which is slated at during the week of 7 to 11 of March 2022. The call is addressed to parties and major groups and stakeholders registered for COP4. The deadline for submission is on Friday, 11 February 2022. The guidelines and the application form is available at the Minamata Convention website. I'm sorry if the text there is too small, but you can certainly check it out over at the Minamata Convention website. And the applications are to be submitted to the email addresses provided on the slide. That's it. Back to you, Claudia.
Thank you very much. And we have a bit over a minute left. And so we would like to stop at one other important point, which is, of course, health-related information of coming to and joining us in Bali, and also how the preparations are going on in Bali to ensure a healthy and a health-conscious working environment. I would like to invite my colleague Richard just to touch on the main items of this slide and the next slide, but we would like to identify or just beg your understanding that we are in constant contact with the host government, and that the host government is looking very intently and very dedicatedly at making not only COP 4.2 safe for all delegates, but also to enable access both to Bali, Indonesia, and also the conference venue. And so some of this information, as we have now come to learn that many things change rapidly, all the information we have to present to you now are the currently known information, but we expect even more information and hopefully facilitative information in the next days and weeks. But Richard, if you could perhaps just very, very briefly indicate health measures. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Claudia. And so there are a couple of things I wanted to highlight to everyone. Some of this information you might be aware of already. So PCR tests are mandated to be undertaken 72 hours before departure. Please make sure to check also with your airlines to make sure that their requirements, so at times the requirements are a little bit different, but please be sure to check with your airlines as well. So the PCR test with a negative result is important for you to travel. Delegates must also be fully vaccinated for COVID-19, which needs to be proven by a COVID-19 vaccination certificate issued by the country's health officials. If any delegate cannot get a full dose of a vaccine due to health reasons, the delegate must enclose an official health declaration form explaining such conditions. Now, please do note that you will need, prior to departure, to fill in an electronic health alert card or EHAC at the Peduli Lindungi application, which is developed by the Indonesian government to help monitor or track COVID-19 cases. You can check out the website indicated on this slide for that purpose. And then also, please note, you need health insurance to cover that has sufficient coverage in case of medical needs while in Bali. It is also strongly recommended for participants to secure additional travel insurance if the health insurance does not cover extended stays or delays due to a positive case or result due to COVID-19. Next slide, please. So upon arrival, a PCR test will be administered to all delegates before proceeding to Bali. Only a negative test will allow you to proceed to Bali. One of the measures that is being created is a travel bubble system, which will be implemented for the duration of COP 4.2. It will start upon the delegates' arrival in Jakarta, all the way to Bali through the Ngurah Rai International Airport, and also at the venue, delegates will be transported to and from the hotel to the meeting venue. At the meeting venue, you have the usual, but just take note, a daily rapid antigen test will be administered, and a negative result will give you a pass to enter the meeting area. And lastly, please note, as conditions continue to evolve, more information on COVID-related requirements and measures will be posted on the meeting website as soon as it becomes available. Any changes with the health protocol policy will also be promptly communicated to delegates. Thanks so much, and back to you, Claudia.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you very much to the participants. We've taken already 2 more minutes of your time. We see a couple of other questions, and if I could maybe just say that we are about to receive specific information on the venue and hotel accommodations, which we shall alert you to in terms of making arrangements to arrive in Bali and to arrive well in time in Bali. It will also include the date sets for which these bookings and availabilities apply. So please check in again with us. Please stay tuned, as they said, so that we can give you the most updated and direct information on this. If we do not give you this information now, it's simply that we want to give you one set of correct information so that it is clear to you. And lastly, just to say, please join us tomorrow and the day after for a deep dive into some of the other topics. And we would like to then also show you, of course, how time is hopefully being used across the different days of the COP. With that, if you have any more questions that are burning, feel free to perhaps record them here or send them to us directly, or join us tomorrow. We hope you join us tomorrow, and we shall try to make a little bit of time available at the end again for more updated logistics information. With that, on behalf of everybody in the Secretariat, both those that you've seen today and those that you have not seen today, but that are all contributing to supporting this, thank you very much. You see here displayed many other events that we are working on. Please do note them for your calendar. Thank you very much, and until the next time. Bye-bye and keep safe.